In the morphology of flowering plants, there is a section, the flower 5.5. Now, the flower is a reproductive unit in angiosperms. These are the flowering plants, and this is a site for sexual reproduction. So it has calyx, corolla, endoecium, and gynoecium. So these are the parts of flowers. Now calyx, see the calyx. Calyx, that is the outermost wall, and the member is sepals. Now this calyx may be gamosepalous, that is sepals united, or polysepalous, that is sepals free. So calyx, the members are sepals, is the outermost covering, green, leaf-like, and these can be gamosepalous, that is sepals united, and polysepalous, that is sepals free. So this was the calyx, one of the wall of the flower, that is a part. Now the another part is the corolla. So what is corolla? So corolla is the color, the colorful part of the flower. Corolla is composed of petals. Okay, now these petals can also be gamopetalous and polypetalous, that is petals united and petals free, just like calyx, gamosepalous and polysepalous. Okay, so this was the corolla and that was the calyx. So these are the two walls of the flower. Now let's talk about the, in the section flower we have, now flower based on the symmetry. The flowers may be actinomorphic, may be zygomorphic, and can be asymmetric. So based on the symmetry, based on the structure, based on the shape of this flower, the flower can be actinomorphic, zygomorphic, and asymmetric. Now let's talk about the actinomorphic symmetry of flower. Now this is radial symmetry. Radial symmetry. Now what is radial symmetry? So when a flower can be divided into two equal radial halves in any radial plane passing through the center. So any radial plane, it means, but it should be passing through the center. Now any radial plane, now take x, y, z, any radial plane, but it should be passing through the center. It's said to be actinomorphic symmetry of flower. Now the example of actinomorphic symmetry of flower is mustard, datura, and chili. Now the zygomorphic symmetry of flower. Now what is zygomorphic symmetry of flower? So when it can be divided into two similar halves only in one particular vertical plane. So it says only one particular vertical plane. Okay, it's kind of, take an human example from top to bottom in vertical plane. If we see passing through the center, so that's the zygomorphic symmetry of flower. Example: pea, gulf, moher, bean, and cassia. So difference between zygomorphic and actinomorphic is, in any radial plane passing through the center, If it's divided into two equal half, that is the actinomorphic symmetry. So lots of equal radial halves form in actinomorphic, whereas in zygomorphic it should be only in one particular vertical plane that divided into two similar halves. So that's the zygomorphic. So zygomorphic is kind of specific, right? Actinomorphic, any radial plane passing through the center. If it's divided, then the actinomorphic. Now, okay, so the example of zygomorphic symmetry of flower is P, gulmohar and bean and cassia. P, gulmohar, bean and cassia. Example of actinomorphic flower is mustard, dhatura, chili. Mustard, dhatura, chili. Now the symmetry, that is asymmetric symmetry of flower. Now what is that? A flower is asymmetric, that is irregular, if it cannot be divided into two similar halves by any vertical plane passing through the center. Now take the actinomorphic. Actinomorphic says flower divided into two equal radial halves in any radial plane passing through the center. Now take the asymmetric. It says if it cannot be divided into two similar halves by any vertical plane passing through the center. It just cannot be divided into two similar halves by any vertical plane passing through the center. That is, it's completely irregular. It's completely different from actinomorphic and zygomorphic. Irregular. It means it cannot just be divided into two halves. So that symmetry is the asymmetric, that is irregular. It just cannot be divided. Now example of asymmetric flower is canna. Example of asymmetric flower is canna. So this was the flower divided based on the symmetry into actinomorphic, zygomorphic and asymmetric. Now actinomorphic is also a radial symmetry. You see, this is why in the definition it says flower divided into two equal radial halves. Radial halves in any radial plane. So it's a radial symmetry. You can remember like that. Actinomorphic radial symmetry. Because it's talking about the radial plane, radial halves, right? Okay. And in zygomorphic, it's a vertical plane. You can remember like that, right? And asymmetric is just irregular. It just cannot be a zygomorphic or actinomorphic. Now, so this was the classification of flower based on the symmetry. Now we have seen the parts of flower, that is different whorls of flower. There are four whorls. The first one is calyx, then corolla, then androecium and gynoecium. Now the calyx. So calyx is the outermost whorl of flower. Now these are sepals. Calyx are also known as sepals. These are green in color. These are leaf-like. Now calyx may be chemosepalous, that is sepals are united. So calyx may be gamosepalous, means sepals united. Gamosepalous, gamo means united. Or polysepalous means sepals are free. So poly means free. So sepals are free. And sepals are the members of calyx. And these are the outermost whorl of flower. These are green, leaf-like. Okay, so this is one of the part of the flower. Now the next part of the flower are the corolla. So corolla, these are the petals. They are composed of petals. Now petals are the color of flower. Simply, petals are the color of flower. Now the same as calyx, the corolla also gamopetalous and polypetalous. It means gamo means united. So petals are united. That means the gamopetalous. And petals free. Poly means free. So polypetalous. Okay. So this was about the corolla. That is the second part of the flower. Right. So calyx and corolla, these are the two whorls of flowers. Now another whorl of flowers remaining are the androecium and gynoecium, which is a reproductive part. So in androecium there are stamens, there is formation of pollen grains, and in gynoecium there are ovaries, there are formation of ovum, then there will be fertilization, and that's how the seed develops. So this is all about the angiosperms. These are the flowering plants. They have the flower, and flower is a reproductive unit. And flower is a reproductive unit as already in here. The flower is the reproductive unit in angiosperms because angiosperms are the flowering plants, right? They have the seeds and they have the flowers, right? Okay. Why gymnosperms are not? Because they have the seeds but they do not have the flowers. So this was it. Now this flower is meant for the sexual reproduction. This flower is meant for sexual reproduction. Okay. Okay. Now another thing about flowers. So based on the symmetry, flowers can be actinomorphic, that is radial symmetry, zygomorphic, that is bilateral symmetry, and asymmetric, that is irregular in shape. But base but flower, this when a flower has both androecium and gynoecium, so flowers is divided into flowers can be bisexual and flowers can be unisexual. Now when a flower has both androecium and gynoecium reproductive structures, so this is a bisexual flower. And when a flower having either only stamens or only carpels, the flower is unisexual. Rem- Repeating again, when a flower has both androecium and gynoecium, that is male and female reproductive structures, then the flower is bisexual. And if a flower having either only stamens that produces the pollen grains or only carpels that produces the ovum, then it is unisexual flower. So this was it. So we have seen the flower. Okay, now we have seen the flower, which is a reproductive unit. It's meant for the sexual reproduction. Again, the flower can be bisexual and flower can be unisexual based on the gynoecium and androecium. Now, again, based on the symmetry, we have classified the flower into actinomorphic, zygonomorphic, and asymmetric. Now, in actinomorphic, this is a radial symmetry that can be divided into two equal halves in any radial plane passing through the center. So this was the actinomorphic. Examples are mustard, datura, and chili. And in zygomorphic, it is a bilateral symmetry that divides in in only one vertical plane into two equal halves. And asymmetric, which is a irregular in shape. Now, and again the parts of flower we have seen, we have discussed, that is four floral whorls. These are the calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. Now calyx, these are the sepals. They can be gamosepalous and polycephalous. Gamosepalous means sepals united. Polysepalous means sepals free. Now corolla they compose of petals. Then these can be gamopetalous, that is petals united, and polypetalous, that is petals free. So this was all about a little bit about the flower, which is a reproductive unit in flowering plants, that is angiosperms